So We Live in Time is a dramatic romantic comedy starring Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh. And I think that I really appreciate how director John Crowley frames this type of relationship by making it nonlinear. Because like the way that I've kind of like described this film is that it feels like putting on that perfect, that like your favorite album that like has like, you know, like those perfect like love songs, but having it set to shuffle. Because this is a nonlinear film. It darts between three key points in this relationship between Tobias, played by Andrew Garfield, and Almut, played by Florence Pugh. It shifts between the time where they first meet amid a car accident and propose to each other, and then it shifts back and forth between that and the pregnancy that Almut has with their daughter, and then it shifts into Almut's discovery of her cancer diagnosis and realizing that she has limited time to live and is concerned about wanting to make the most out of her life. And this structure works because I think like it sets like some expectations, because like when we first see them, the two of them, like we kind of like see them hanging out with each other. We see like Almut pregnant and on the toilet, and Tobias just hanging out with her, and then Almut getting her cancer diagnosis. So we're already set up for all these key events that we know are going to happen. We know there's going to be a pregnancy involved. We know that there's going to be a cancer diagnosis, and we know that these two are going to fall in love. And I think going back and forth between all that creates like this more complete picture of their lives that never bores. Because it feels like the moments that are chosen for this film are like the most fascinating, and like the scenes that you wouldn't typically see within like a romance. And I think the thing that I think I love most about the film is the characters. Obviously, if you have a romance film, you want to love the characters and you want to see them get together here. And they're pretty interesting, and like they have some. I think what's most fascinating about them are their careers. So Almut is this is a chef, a very accomplished chef, who tries out like fusion techniques, and she's very accomplished. And Tobias, I love his career. He's a guy who works for Weetabix. And I love how, like, at one point, like, when he's getting into bed with Almut, like, you know, his talk, like, they end up having this conversation about, like, oh, do you get, like, free Weetabix at work? And Tobias is like, yeah, I have been known on a few times to get some free Weetabix, which is a super funny conversation to have while you're taking your pants off before you're getting ready to have sex. So there's a lot of, like, sweet and funny moments there. And I think they're balanced here, where it never feels like we're just getting the drama or the comedy out of certain bits. Because a film like this feels like it could be that. Like, it could feel like, you know, like the meet cute that happens here would just be all the silly and the sweet and the cute moments, and then all the scenes of her cancer diagnosis would be all the depressing and the saddest moments. And that's not to say there aren't sad moments there, but it feels like there's a good balance of all of that. And I think it helps that there's like a little bit, just enough of an absurdity to make this film more enduring. Because like I said, like Tobias does a fascinating job of, you know, working for Weetabix. And I love the meet cute between them, which is basically a car accident. It's Almut smacking into Tobias with her car and him ending up in the hospital and her trying to make amends, and that's how their relationship starts, which is weird, but also like cute and sweet at the same time in its own weird way. And I think the film establishes its fluctuation between the drama and the comedy is going to be more organic, based on the fact that when Almut first receives her cancer diagnosis, the first thing that she does with Tobias is pose this question of, okay, should I just lie down and die and just like take the treatments, or are we just going to ride this out and just, you know, make sure that the last few months of my life are going to be the best? You know, what are we going to do here? And it feels like this is a film that wants to kind of like, it still wants to be sweet and it still wants to have fun, but also not shy away from the more poignant moments of this type of relationship. And I think that shows like this more like complete picture of their relationship And also like having it nonlinear, I think prevents it from being boring. Because like just when you think like we're getting like this sweet moment where Tobias is playing with his daughter, we get like this concerning dialogue between them about if they're gonna have children or not. And of course, because we saw the pregnancy scene early, we know that they're going to have kids. But still, you're fascinated to see, like, how did that build to that? How did we get to this point? And how did the pregnancy happen? It's the delivery sequence in particular is a pretty sweet and funny moment, but also feels surprisingly grounded. Like it feels like a moment that could go over the top with being too silly, but it feels like it's just funny enough. Where you could accept, where you could kind of like buy this as happening with the relationship between these two people. So Garfield and Pugh's performance, they have such good chemistry here, and you can tell that they have good chemistry just by the scenes where they don't have as much dialogue. Like there's a few moments where they're just hanging out and there's no specific dialogue that has to be had between them. They just have to have that resonant energy like between them, like where they could just be staring at each other and you can tell that they're in love. And probably my favorite scene in this film is the moment where like Almut is struggling through a pregnancy. She's not feeling that great and she just wants to hang out in the bathtub. So with barely any dialogue, Almut gets undressed, she gets in the bathtub, and Tobias follows her into the tub with like, I forget what the sweet was. It's basically like cookies. He follows her in there with cookies, and they just sit there in the tub, staring at each other, eating cookies, her balancing some sweets on like her pregnant belly. And that's it. That's the whole scene. And it perfectly encapsulates just how devoted Tobias is and how much Almut appreciates that he'll stand by her. And I love how like that comes around later in the film where Almut wants to prove herself with this big cooking competition while she is, has this cancer diagnosis and is sick. And it's one of those moments where Tobias is at first like frustrated because Almut wouldn't admit to Tobias that this is what she was secretly doing when he wasn't looking. But then he comes around and realizes, okay, I got to be there and support her and, wanting to like prove herself, even though she doesn't have to, because like he'll always be there for her. But this is something she feels that she has to do before her clock runs out, and just him being there is so sweet. And like I said, this only focuses, I think, on the most interesting scenes. So like there isn't a lot of time focused on the specifics of like how they would eventually get married, or Almut's eventual death, or or all like the little things of like raising a child. It just feels like the key moments that you want to focus on for this couple that best displays how much they love each other. So like I said, it's like having all those favorite love songs set to shuffle, and just Garfield and Florence Pugh really make this film work, just because they have genuine love and emotion for each other, and just for focusing on all like the scenes that you wouldn't typically think would make for a good romantic drama. Like I was particularly interested with how many just like genuine displays of affection there were in a lot of the sex scenes. Because you'd think that, like a lot of this, you would think that a lot of the sex scenes would be during like the early part of the film where they first meet and like they're debating whether or not they want to stay together. But actually it does proceed into like the cancer arc as well. And I think just like the way they show affection for each other, and they focus on like the key moments, not just on like the moments where like, they're undressing and making out with each other, although they do spend just enough time on those scenes where I think like you could tell like they're really into each other. But then just like the afterglow of them just like getting dressed, or just them having that moment, like even when they're not fully together, or like they don't live with each other, there's that moment where just like he leaves and like feeling that glow between them when like, there's a wall apart from them, but they're still attracted to each other in that moment. And it's just, it works so well for all those little moments, while still having big moments and having lots of moments of fun. And I love how like it feels very humanizing to have more humor in scenes that could be a lot more tearful and that could feel like they could spill off into melodramatics. In particular, there's one tragic scene here where Almut and Tobias go to the doctor and they realize that, the treatment isn't isn't really working, and then to break the tension, Almond's stomach just kind of like growls. You're like, oh, I'm hungry. It's like, that's okay. And like the doctor hands out some candy, and they just have like a cute little discussion about candy, just to break the tension, just to like feel that, you know, like you're human for a moment, that, you know, like the clock isn't ticking down, that you're alive and that you're in the moment, and that you can just be there and just have a normal conversation about sweets. And just so many of those moments, I think, are what make this movie work, and what made me love it so much more as a romantic dramatic comedy that can find that perfect balance of, you know, forming a more complete picture of a romance, rather than just being, is she gonna die? You know, are they gonna get together? Is she gonna have the baby? It's all those core aspects, but only focusing on the points that for life in general matter the most. And that's what I love so much about like We Live in Time. Like, it's not just a romantic dramatic comedy. It's one of those films where you can feel how much love there is with these characters, and it isn't reduced to such a simplistic degree. It feels very all-encompassing, and Garfield and Pugh's performance are what make this film work so damn well.